It's actually thinking about, okay, what do you need to do to work on your business? Do you need to work out in advance what your ongoing education needs are? So what's your professional development? What are you looking for? Are you looking for working more with children and you want to look at when Geraldine's doing one of her courses? Or is it you're really interested in cardiovascular health? So you don't end up with, oh my goodness, it's the end of the financial year or the calendar year, depending on your organisation. I've got to get another 20 hours in the next month. What am I going to do? And I'll just pick anything that I can get away with.
I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that in the groups. People going, oh no, I've just realised it's the end of the year and I haven't done any of my training. What has everybody got for free? And I do have free things on my site so that people can, get some hours. But I'm always saying to people, have a look, because the weekends, the big companies have already booked their weekends. Yes. We know when they are.
Yeah.
And if you've looked at when their big weekends are, you can be doing the early bird on those. Mentoring with Geraldine is a bite-sized practitioner podcast for naturopaths, nutritionists, herbalists and practitioners, responding directly to the needs of the practicing natural therapist. With interviews, herbal discussions, something business, something clinical, you'll get the variety you need to enjoy and stay motivated in practice. So thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast for our episodes. If you'd like more support, get in contact, and I look forward to working with you soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mentoring with Geraldine and the Bite-Sized Podcast. How are you all today? Well, I've got another treat for you here in December, and we've got Gill Stannard here today. Now, Gill has been a naturopath since, I don't know if I should say it out loud, really loudly, 1991 she qualified. So that's 30 years as a naturopath. And I mean, it just shows that we can all do this. I've had almost 20 years, and it means that this is a career for life. This is something that can transition with us, go with us, move and change with us as we move and change as well. Gill used to be a lecturer at Southern schools in Melbourne, and then she had her own program. She had her own radio program in Melbourne as well, and that went for 20 years. But lecturing at Southern schools meant that she started mentoring, and that's how I started mentoring as well. We would have both been still mentoring those people at college, and then we went to the broader world once we realized actually there's nobody out there doing what we do, and so we kind of came out to help, really. So I've asked Gill, you've done retreats, you've mentored, you've educated, you're a lecturer, you're the NHAA, you're currently in the organising committee for the next conference. So you're a really, really busy lady, an extremely busy lady. And so I'm so pleased and so lucky to have been able to nab a little bit of time with Gill, because we thought we'd talk about quiet quitting today. So Gill, please say hello to everyone and tell us a bit about yourself and quiet quitting.
Hello, it's lovely to be here and talk to another expat Kiwi naturopath in Australia. So quiet quitting, earlier in 2022, I started hearing this phrase quiet quitting, and I thought, the heck's that about? And I thought it was quite interesting because, to me, the other way I describe quiet quitting is working to rule. It's when you're employed and you say, I'm just going to work my hours and work my job spec. I'm not going to answer my phone outside of work. I'm going to take the lunch breaks I'm meant to have. It's kind of like how people used to work, and what the wonderful trade union movement actually strived for, to get people to have some balance in their life. So then I thought, well, that's fine. So basically, quiet quitting is doing just enough work to keep your job. However, the underlying issue with that is when you're being employed. So I thought, well, in my experience of mentoring for over 20 years, do I actually see signs of quiet quitting in our community, in the health practitioner community? What does that look like? And there's a big downside to it, because for most practitioners, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So you haven't kind of got that trade-off. No. But I kind of thought I thought there were some characteristics that I've seen from practitioners in business, and also perhaps even some things that we can borrow from quiet quitting in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Because when we think about, so my husband's doing a little bit of quiet quitting, I've noticed, he's worked endlessly and tirelessly for the organisation he works for, and he's being treated really badly. So he's like, well, I used to stay on till 8 o'clock at night no, I'm not staying on till 8 o'clock at night anymore. And we can't do that in our business for ourselves. We can't go, well, I'm not going to work on, I still have to pay the bills. But we can be more organized within the times that we work, and we can have a better management system for ourselves. So boundaries. I'm always banging on about boundaries, and boundaries for us as our own, our own business are huge. And that's part of it. It's, I decided at the weekend I wasn't going to work. I didn't do anything. I didn't open my computer. I avoided everything I possibly could avoid, including social media, so that I could have a weekend off. Now, it's my own business. We could think of that as quiet quitting, or we could term it as boundaries and taking care of myself, having some self-care time. So what can we do within our businesses, Gill? How do you see us taking on a little bit of that quiet quitting?
Or perhaps first, how do we recognize this if we're doing this? I had a really interesting, I tend to work with experienced prackies, so prackies who may have been in business for 10 or more years, or at least a few years, and had a group mentoring session with a bundle of them who've been around for a while. And a few people brought up, I saw that article and I did the quiz and I think I've been quiet quitting, which I thought was really interesting. So, I think this comes back to boundaries in a way, but kind of the other flip side of the boundary. You've mentioned not working on the weekends if that's not a clinic time. That's one thing. But what about the work that we do within our set hours? Are you quite quitting by going, I've had a cancellation, I'm going to go for a cup of coffee? I just finished early today? So I actually think one of the things I tend to say to practitioners who go, I'm working at night, I'm doing all my research, I'm doing all this. It's like, well, have you actually tried doing that within your hours? So it's a lot more obvious when you have an external clinic and you're hiring that space or paying rent on that space, that it's a really nice container. It gets murky when you work from home, but just even if you work from home, think about the hours that you set your books open at and think of those as your work hours. Sometimes I've seen some newer practitioners have their booking system looks like, I'm going to do 2 hours these nights and I'm going to do this and that. And I go, maybe you need to be a bit less available, because you've rein it in and decide what your hours are for now. And so that first sign is, that you're actually quite quitting on yourself, is you're not showing up or you're taking a lot of personal time if a client cancels or if you haven't got bookings. So I think one of the first steps to having good boundaries is thinking about what you're doing in your work hours so that you're not doing them out of hours, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And part of that, thinking about those work hours, is actually booking in semi-regularly some time to actually work on your business.
Yeah.
And, it's like, there's so many things that we need to do in business. And I suppose a really big sign of quiet quitting is you really are only doing the bare minimum you can get away with. Oh my goodness, I've got my taxes got to get in, or I'm going to do a newsletter and I've got to do that now, or I have to do this research because that client's coming tomorrow. It's actually thinking about, okay, what do you need to do to work on your business? Do you need to work out in advance what your ongoing education needs are? So what's your professional development? What are you looking for? Are you looking for working more with children and you want to look at when Geraldine's doing one of her courses, or is it you're really interested in cardiovascular health? So you don't end up with, oh my goodness, it's the end of the financial year or the calendar year, depending on your organisation. I've got to get another 20 hours in the next month. What am I going to do? And I'll just pick anything that I can get away with.
I see a lot of that in the groups. People going, oh no, I've just realized it's the end of the year and I haven't done any of my training. What has everybody got for free? And I do have free things on my site so that people can, get some hours. But I'm always saying to people, have a look, because the weekends, the big companies have already booked their weekends.
Yes.
We know when they are.
Yeah.
And if you've looked at when their big weekends are, you can be doing the early bird on those. So I've already booked in one of the company's weekends that I do, and I've already paid the early bird, and it's all sorted for next year, next August. And then the smaller things, I can think to myself, what is, as you were saying, what is my specialty area? Or what do I want to expand into? Do I want to see more women? Do I want to see the whole family? who is it that I want to see, and how can I get more education in that area specifically? I want to see, there's a lot going on maybe with the current virus, the post-virus. So there's a lot of cardiac stuff coming up for people.
Yes.
As you said, let's, look at that education, and maybe you're booking it in helps you financially to book it in, because when it's happening. So I've already paid for next August.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that coming up to August. It's done and dusted. My early bird is paid.
Yeah.
So, I've got the retreat. I had a retreat this year, my first ever retreat. I know you run retreats.
Congrats.
And I was determined I was never, ever going to run a retreat. It's just like monumental organization. I've run symposiums. I've run seminars. I've run all these big
It's a lot of work.
It's so much work. I was like, I'm not doing this. And I thought, no, I have to do it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have it in Adelaide. And everyone has to come to me, because then I know where everything is. I can organize everything. It actually was great. And so now okay, there's another one next year. But those people who came to this one have all said, well, we want to come to the next one. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put it out to the world. Obviously I'm telling the world now, but you won't officially know until February.
Well, you're warning people that you're probably going to have an early bird in February. So start put your dollars away. Yeah.
Put the dollars away, but it's not till November. But it means that you can be looking and going, well, what am I going to do through the year? My CPE points, are they specific for me? Am I going to do the graduate program? Am I going to do something with Gill? And how am I going to work this into my finances, into my CPD, and into my times, my availability? Do I do it outside of my availability or inside? So I have a clinical discussion group on a Monday at lunchtime. So people are sitting there eating their lunch, and they're like, oh, I've booked a client in there. I'm like, why have you booked a client in? You have to eat lunch. Get CPD and your lunch at the same time. It's organized to be at your lunchtime, so that you can take a break and eat and ask your questions and learn.
And that actually kind of rolls into another point that I really, really noticed. And this relates to actually spending time with people, particularly in person, and making connections, is that one of the biggest issues that we have in our profession is isolation. There's been, I think John Wardle et al. Have done research over in the last 10 years that just, it's one of the reasons people leave the profession. So I suppose a quite quitting sign that I identify is that you feel isolated, but you're not doing anything to connect with your peers and other health practitioners who might be in your area, that you're actually, now that we can do things face to face, it's fantastic we can do things by distance, but actually, my challenge would be for your practitioner listeners to actually book or commit to an in-person weekend, day, whatever experience in 2023, because those are the times that you really connect with your peers, you get to know people. It's what goes on outside of the sessions that are just as important about what's happening within them. And if you don't do this, your sense of isolation tends to grow.
Isolation is huge for us, I think. And that's one of the cool things about doing the Monday group, is then I haven't gone to so many in these last couple of years conferences, simply because of my mum and having to go to New Zealand and stuff. But normally I will go to 2 or 3 a year, and it means that people already know me. So they already have a connection. They'll come up to me and, hi, Geraldine, I've seen you in the group. I've seen you in Strictly Education. I've seen you here. I've seen you there. And I want to introduce myself. And it takes away, because you've had this connection and this interaction, it doesn't make conferences as scary.
Yeah. And it's like, with conferences, I always put it out to people that I've only seen online. It's like, hey, if you're coming, sometimes we look a bit different in real life. If you see me, say hello, introduce yourself. I'm not being rude if I don't say anything. It's just, it can be, sometimes people aren't how you imagine them.
Yeah, they're totally not. It's and that first time you meet people, I was with a group of people for a year, and then we all went on retreat, and then we all said the same things for it. Oh, you're really tall. Oh, you're actually a lot shorter. Because of course we're all the same height online.
That's right. Yes, we sit up straight. Yes, yeah.
But we're all the same height. We're all, yes, I find I've got blue hair today, but normally I have pink hair. So I'm easy to find with my pink hair. And you've got some pink hair at the back. I'm just trialing a few new colors. So, we are accessible. Come and say hello to us at these things. But at the same point, we have to make sure we're connecting on a regular basis. And you can set up your own groups. If you set up your own chat group, it's like everyone relies on somebody else to do something. And we can't rely on other people We can't rely on other people. So there isn't a chapter in Adelaide at the moment because I ran it for a really long time. And then I was like, guys,
no one else stood up.
And no one else stood up. So there's no chapter, there's no meeting. Now and then people say to me, when are we having the next chapter meeting, Geraldine? You haven't done one for a while. I'm like, you just said that you take it on, be it. But you can do that in any community.
Yeah.
If you're in the countryside, who are your other nearest practitioners because chances are you'll be traveling 100 Ks to get to Kmart or wherever.
Yeah.
So why not see if you can't meet up for a coffee when you're there? When I was in Gill, I was in the Northern Territory in July, and I'd made a plan with my Oriya rep to meet up with a few of the locals and have coffee. I got COVID. I didn't get to meet anyone. I was in quarantine instead. Yeah. But the point was that, we can meet people. We're going somewhere, put it on Facebook. Hey, I'm here. Is anybody around to meet? Because you might just discover people that you didn't know were there.
I even have students that I taught in the 90s in Melbourne. One in particular is a Kiwi who's been really successful when she moved back to New Zealand. And when she comes to Sydney now, we do everything we can to catch up because it's like, it's having those, although she's incredibly well connected in her own community, it's like, tell me what conferences I should come to, tell me this and tell me that. And it's like, and it doesn't just have to be, when I moved to Sydney, so I'd been practicing in Melbourne for 22, 23 years. I knew people. Moved to Sydney and it's like, oh, this is like a foreign country. Yeah. And I was really lucky because I discovered that a naturopath that I started to get to know, who'd been in practice for a few years, had set up an inner west, it's got a funny name, inner west, kind of like, it's kind of practitioners of all kind meetup group. And so there are chiropractors, there are physiotherapists, podiatrists. The most committed people to turning up are the naturopaths and nutritionists and herbalists. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm walking into this community that's already here. It's friendly. We're meeting at the pub for lunch. It just takes one person to try to get a few people together. So if you're feeling isolated, maybe the optician who's working on her own down the street is feeling isolated. It doesn't just have to be people. I mean, it's having a network or a referral network is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great way of, bouncing those ideas off others and realizing, in social media, we're all doing amazingly well. There are no traumas, there are no worries. We're all in beige, and we all look perfect, don't we? On social media. And then when you actually get to it and you start talking to people, and the last thing I was at, there was a local, we had someone come and talk to us, and we didn't have many people there. He didn't tell many people he was coming to talk about his product. So there were about 10 of us there. But when we all started talking, like 2 of them said, I don't see any naturopathy clients anymore at all. It's just not buzzing for me. I'm doing acupuncture. Somebody else was like, well, it's like, well, do I do this and do I do that? And so once we get to see people in real life, we actually make those discoveries that what we're seeing on socials is often very, very different.
That's a good quiet quitting kind of question too, is that, you say you don't have any time, but how much time during your work hours are you spending on social media? And is that scrolling through rather than actually creating your own strategy for posts, which are targeting your ideal client and where he or she or they are going to hang out, and just scrolling through? So your practice is quiet. So you're on social media, you're on Instagram, you're scrolling. So many prackies say to me that they feel quite ill sometimes, particularly Instagram, because it is so picture perfect, and thinking everybody's doing so well, but what about me? And it's like, well, that's just the picture that they want to put out there. This is not real life. And actually, if it's making you feel ill, don't scroll. Think about your own posts for your target community and do that. So have falling down that rabbit hole on social media.
Because the other thing is, what is perfect for one won't be perfect for another. So when my kids were little, so when my daughter was in kindy and before that, I could only see 4 clients a week. So I would be full, and I would say I'm full, but I had 4 clients a week. So we have to realize that what is perfect for one and what is right for one won't be right for another. If you're working full time, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and you've rented a room and you're seeing 4 people, then, what are your strategies? What are you thinking about? How can you improve it? Whereas if you've got, little kids and you're pretty much doing everything yourself, and 4 kids a week is actually 4 clients a week is actually a lot.
Look, I have a theory that one of the reasons our business probably needs to start quiet is that it's quite overwhelming when you first start working with people. 4 clients feels like 40 clients, and you're going off and doing extra research and going back to your notes and thinking things through and overthinking things, probably because you've got so much time to think about things. But, it's that. I mean, in Melbourne, I was seeing 30 to 35 clients a week over 3 days. I worked part-time. I worked 3 days a week with clients, and after a while, I realized, and I have a non-client work day or half work day a week where I catch up on newsletters and everything else. That's full. That's full. I can't, after 20 something years, I went, I can't work at that pace anymore. And there's also that whole stuff around burnout. Yeah. What I'll point out is if any of your listeners are looking at my 12 points about the quiet quitting, is these are also signs potentially of burnout as well. And that little experience mentoring catch up I mentioned, the other thing that happened later in the session was almost everybody admitted to having a significant episode of burnout in the last year to year and a half. Some of that burnout's been greater in 2022 because we were in survival mode for 2 years. People who are homeschooling were just trying to keep their head above water and try to do their business as well. And now we've had a bit more of normality, except people are getting sick at the moment, a bit more normality. Then it's like, I'm exhausted. I didn't, and I speak for myself too. I mean, was really lucky in the previous, many years that I could at the point in my business where I can take 4 or even 5 weeks off a year and have a decent holiday in the middle of the year, which is fantastic. So 2020 came along and that was all cancelled, and I've gone and done a trip like that since then. And when you spend more time at home, when you work from home, you're always time to go and do a little bit more work or look at something. I think we all need a good rest.
I think we do too. I think, and that's why, I batch my podcast so that and over this December, so it's all conversations with people so that I can rest. Yeah. So that if, you're listening on this podcast now, you're hopefully doing something enjoyable. I listen to podcasts while I'm walking. I'll listen to podcasts while I'm doing the garden, so that hopefully you're doing something that is enjoyable for you as well. And you're getting that break over this summer period that I think we all need. I'd even say, actually, over your break, say you're taking 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever off over Christmas, actually don't listen to the podcast then. When you're getting back into business in the new year, or if you're having a kind of prep day before you start to see clients, then start listening to the podcasts again. That actually you wanted some time off. Unless you're actually listening right now, don't stop.
No, don't stop. No, don't. Absolutely. Don't stop now. Just keep listening. But also think about, sometimes we need that pause. Yep. Absolutely. Between the thoughts to actually find out the genius of what's going on. That, keeping in mind that there have, even last year, there was still a lot of holidays being cancelled last Christmas, that if you're actually having some time off, if you're away or at home, to actually take that time off. So you've got a chance of starting the new year refreshed. Yeah, and part of that time off, I think, go back to social media, which, it's brilliant and it's awful. It's a time suck and it's an inspiration at the same time to actually take time off social media particularly if it's a social media platform that you're using for work. Your clients need to know that you are not available, that you're on holiday, that you're uncontactable. So when you go back to your boundaries, remember your boundaries are, I'm not here. I am out of the clinic from this date to this date. Then take a social media pause as well. If you've got a private Facebook page with your friends or, private Insta page, whatever, fine. But if it's the platform that you are using for your business, you need to walk the talk. You can't then complain. I got a text from this client at 9 o'clock last night. Don't they know I'm on holiday? And it's like, well, no, you're giving them a message that you're available and that you're around. So part of your boundaries is be clear with your social media boundaries as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on boundaries and on the end of boundaries, I think we will close today's discussion. So thank you so much, Gill, for chatting with us. It's really good to have you here on the podcast. I really enjoyed it, and I love catching up with you. And I will see you at the NHAA International Conference in 2023. So I hope everyone's put that in their diary and that they're looking at, I could book that in and get my points, because that's an entire year's worth of points.
Get the points. And if you're coming from outside of Melbourne, your flight is a tax deduction, or your transport, get the hotel because it's a tax deduction.
Yeah.
You know, the aim in business is to earn enough money so you pay tax.
Yeah. And then your food is a tax deduction.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. In Melbourne, except buying shoes. Where else do you go?
So your uniform?
No, I don't think you get shoes. You can't. No, you have to.
You can get bags. You can get bags.
You can get bags, but you have to stitch your name on your clothes for it to be as a uniform. So we don't want to do that. No, we don't. Internal labels, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I'd be cheating a bit. Anyway, thank you so much for chatting with us, Gill. It's been absolutely brilliant having you here today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining me today. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast for the weekly episodes. If you'd like even more support and learning, then the Academy is for you. Here you'll find part 2 of the herbal discussions, more clinical learning, and case studies to support your clients in practice. Bye for now.